So game I first saw a few years back that it's been in development ever since, is future unfolding, and there's been a lot of things going on because what I saw first was just a prototype, sort of an idea of this game that's focused a lot on exploration and sort of interacting with the environment and sort of learning about things. Can you tell us where the project has taken you today?
Sure. So we started with a game where we wanted to, like the thing we showed you at GameX, we wanted to make a game that was really fun to interact with the environment, so it should feel nice to walk around in the forest, and there wasn't so much you can do back then, but we really wanted to make sure that the whole interaction was like a really nice experience, like a delightful experience. So now, during the last years, we actually worked on adding like puzzles to the game, adding different animals you can meet, new areas you can discover. So it's more like a real game now, and we're trying to do a balance between making a game that is sort of artistic, like if you think games like Proteus or, for example, but also making a game that is like a core game like Zelda. So we're trying to be somewhere in the middle, where we give the player a lot of freedom to do whatever they want and to not tell them what to do, but also where there is things you have to solve, like where there are obstacles that you need to solve in order to progress. So it's not completely free roaming, but it's not hand-holdy either.
Yeah, I think we talked about the influence of Legend of Zelda the last time we talked, and it is sort of evident there. What is it? What would you say that it is about those old Legend of Zelda games that you want to sort of explore in this game? What elements? Because you're sort of picking your favorite elements, if you will.
So we really want this game to be about freedom of, like player freedom and the freedom of exploration. So you should just feel like you can go wherever you want, and we want you to be able to. Not feel that we want to be able to allow you to discover things yourself, right? We don't want to tell you what you can do before you can actually do it. And there's other games like that do that as well. Like, I mean, Witness is a really recent example where you can walk around. In Witness, you can walk around the whole island. So almost nothing is like locked off in the beginning. So we wanted to make sure that you can really explore the world. But that the game is mostly about exploring the world, but also figuring out the rules of that world. So we have a world that's surreal, and there's like specific rules that are going on that we don't tell you, we don't spell out for you, and you have to figure out those rules in order to progress.
And of course, some of those rules are more complicated than others. Could you give an example of what sort of puzzle there is there for the player to solve, without spoiling, of course?
Sure. Okay, so you start out in a world that looks very natural. And you soon discover that the world is actually surreal. So there's weird things going on, and there are objects in the world that have unnatural source. They're artificial. They have artificial placement, and that's something you can just observe, and you have to figure out what you do with those objects to solve puzzles. And at the same time, so we have this, and we also have different animals you meet, and you also discover that the animals actually have weird properties. They have weird behavior that are not like real animals behave. And you have to figure out how to interact with the animals and with the objects, the artifacts, to solve certain puzzles.
Another interesting aspect of the game is that it's procedural. To a certain extent, this sort of randomized in what order players encounter different obstacles and areas, and the areas themselves are partially randomly generated, or procedurally generated is the proper term. Can you tell us a little bit about how that impacts the experience?
Sure. So what we try to do is we use procedural generation for adding variation to the play experience. So when you start a new game, you get a new map, you get a new world that is unique in how it is configured. So we have different areas in the game that we have designed, but the way we design it, we have our own level editor where we can define, we want to have this type of area, and it has a certain amount of variance, a certain spectrum of variation that we can say. So it's not going to be the same level every time you play, but there will be things that you will recognize if you play the game again. So things will be slightly different. Or if you play the game and you talk to your friend and he's playing the game as well, then you will realize, okay, you're playing the same game, but there are actually things are like slightly different. And that's so we use it more to add variation to your experience than, but it still has discrete puzzles and that are somewhat linear.
I think an interesting thing is the way you go about these puzzles, because of course there's no text, there's no sort of tutorial, there's nothing to play to tell the player what to do, which is sort of part of the design. That's it would be breaking the rules of the design to have that. But that also asks a lot about the design. It requires a lot to sort of to put yourself in the player's shoes, to sort of make sure that it's not a frustrating experience. Can you tell us a little bit about the works that has gone into that?
Yeah, I guess that's probably the hardest thing about designing this game, that we really trying to have a balance of giving you freedom but also not frustrating you. So it's actually, we actually have to look at how we give feedback to the player, and it has to be very, very subtle so we don't give you way too much, but it also have to give you some feedback, so otherwise it just feels random. And because there are real connections in the world between how the animals react and how the objects work. So we have concrete rules for those, and we need the player to be able to figure out what those rules are, but in a subtle way. So it's probably the hardest task of designing this game, and maybe also one reason why we have worked on it for so long. But yeah, it's a fine balance. I guess once we release the game, we will see if we've succeeded with our vision for that.
I guess it's also important then to have people try it to see how long it takes for people to figure out the rules, what rules that aren't clear enough, or if something is too obvious and clear, perhaps.
Yeah, it's very important for us to show it at these events, or also to submit the game to festivals and get people's feedback, because then you get a good idea of how different audiences react to the game. But so far, I mean, our experience have been pretty good, actually. Like many people assume that a game doesn't work well in a setting like Gamescom, for example, where it's very loud. But actually, people when we show the game, people that played, like if they have the chance, people played actually for a long time. We had people who played the game at like a really loud booth for 1 hour, like they really got into the game. So we had, I think, we had like a better reaction than we would have expected in the settings we showed the game so far.
I mean, there's two sides of that, because it's a game where there's a sole focus. So if you sit down and you can tune everything out, it's almost easier than a game where there's a lot of different things going on, perhaps, in some ways. But at the same time, you got to find that sort of inner place where you can actually focus on that one thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, definitely, yeah.
So one new thing that has happened in the years is that you announced that it's coming to PlayStation 4 not long ago. You were on PlayStation blog and opened up a lot of new people's eyes to the game. I expect that you got a lot of feedback and people asking you things and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the decision to go to PS4?
Sure. So yeah, we're really excited that we're working on the PS4 version. We designed the game from the beginning for controller, actually. I mean, you can play it on the keyboard if you want on Steam, but it's really everything's designed for a for a classic controller. So it works really nicely with the DualShock 4, and yeah, like we really also like. I mean, we like a lot of games, a lot of indie games that come out on PlayStation 4. I guess it is. I think it's a nice environment to be in. There's so many great games that came out on PlayStation 4, just like this the last 2 months, that I think we feel like it could be like the right audience for our game to be in that kind of environment, basically.
You mentioned before here that you're not quite at the end here. You still have some ways to go. You want to flesh out and create more content for the game. Can you tell us a little bit about the road ahead, and when you plan on being finished, and what platforms you'll be out at launch, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so we just got a funding source from a local funding in Berlin, and we plan to finish the game with that, so it can be released in the beginning of next year, basically.
Will it be simultaneous on Steam and PS4, or?
Yeah, ideally, like if we, like that's our plan. Like if we can pull it off, we'll see how it goes. Like if it's not simultaneous, it will be really shortly after each other. Yeah, but that would be our wish that we can do that.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.